Okay, with that, I will then proceed to introduce the elderly gentleman who's sitting to the left of Adam. And that gentleman is going to be David Benjamin. And David is an independent consultant who is involved in areas of clinical pharmacology and toxicology, has spoken in my course several years now, and will do it again this year. And he has an undergraduate degree from Boston. Is there a Boston University? Yes? Okay. In Boston University. A BA in Biological Sciences. He has an MS and PhD in Pharmacology from the University of Vermont College of Medicine, and has done fellowships in clinical pharmacology and toxicology, has a long list of publications, of books and papers, and is a keynote speaker in many, many meetings, and continues to present those talks at scientific conferences, as we just discussed this morning. And with that, I will let David then take the floor.
Okay, I'm not going to stand up. I'm going to speak from here. I've never been accused of having a soft voice. I think you will be able to hear me. I think that one of the points that is so very important was brought out just a few minutes ago, and that is, for career purposes, it's really important to like what you do. If you have a passion about what you do, and I got the same fortune cookie that you got, that said whoever has a job that they really enjoy never works a day in their life, and it's true. I think reviewing cases is the most fascinating thing that a person can do. And I don't, because my background is in pharmacology and toxicology, I'm always getting cases that involve medications or drugs. It doesn't have to be in a criminal arena. It could be something like possession of drugs with intent to distribute. It could be a drug overdose. It could involve different, like isomers of cocaine, like there are some non-natural isomers of cocaine that can be made in the bathtub, pseudocaine and allocaine, if you're familiar with those. But mostly I'm a biologist. My training after I finished graduate work was to work in the pharmaceutical industry and to do drug development and testing, phase 1, 2, and 3 testing. And I've always been fascinated by pharmacokinetics, relationships between the blood levels of drugs and the actions and the toxic effects. So that is frequently the question that as a toxicologist you get asked by whoever retains you. Did those drugs injure that person? Was that person impaired by that drug? Or did that drug kill that person? Frequently, you only have one blood level that was ever taken. And sometimes that blood level was taken after death. And you have no idea whether the blood level was rising, whether it was at a plateau phase, or whether it was in the elimination phase. It's a random blood level. And if it was taken after death, there's another phenomenon which is one of the most fascinating phenomena in biological science called postmortem redistribution. And after death, when cells die and drugs have been sequestered in fat depots or in other organs, they come out of those organs and out of those sequestration sites, and they go back into the blood, and they artificially elevate the blood. I can remember a plaintiff's lawyer in a civil case sent me a file, and I looked at the toxicology, and there were about 10 medications the patient was on, and they were on like 100 times what the therapeutic level was. He goes, they overdosed them 100 times on all 10 drugs. I said, I'm afraid not. I'm afraid none of these data are really usable. So it's very, very interesting, and the biology of it is fascinating. But one of the things about forensics is there's an awful lot of common sense involved in forensics. One of the biggest problems is working with attorneys who do not have scientific information. They don't have scientific training. They may be excellent attorneys, and they try to develop a theme of the case. And the theme of the case does not fit the data or the scientific evidence. And as I was saying with Ira before the class, it's like trying to pound the round peg into the square hole. It's like, give me a bigger hammer, man, I can't get it in. Well, you know what? Your theory is wrong. So in many instances, the attorneys, the prosecutors, the defense attorneys, everybody depends on the forensic scientists to explain the data and the science to them so they can get an idea of what happened in the case. And to me, evaluating those cases is so fascinating. I do it a lot, watching the Red Sox, having a file on my lap, putting yellow stickums on things, highlighting blood levels, and then coming back the next day and taking those data and writing the report. But going down the list, looking at what happened, getting a history of what happened with that individual. Has a person taken a single dose, a large overdose? Have they been on it for several weeks? Are they at steady state? Are the levels reliable? Was the test a screening level test? Was it a confirmatory test? Is it consistent with the other reports of what individuals saw this individual do or what happened? All of these need to be factored in. I couldn't recommend a more interesting career to anybody. It is just the most fascinating thing, and I hope you all go into it, find your niche, and have a great time.
Super, perfect, 5 minutes, that's amazing, write this down. Okay, the first question for David is, must one always work for a civil service type organization in forensic science, or are there worthwhile career positions in the private sector, and if so, where?
Well, the short answer is no, because I can say that I'm unusual from the perspective that I do not work for a government lab. I am an independent consultant. Frequently, in a criminal situation, I will be for the defense. Doesn't mean that I haven't worked for the Commonwealth either, because there are many times when I've been called by district attorneys and so forth. So the answer is absolutely not. And I would also say to you that there is a big need for experts to work in the defense, because there was a wonderful case that talked about one of the major differences between working for the government and working for a defendant or a defense attorney. And they talked about the imbalance in investigative resources. If you work for law enforcement and you need a special assay done or special work, you can send it down to the FBI. You can send it over to the Secret Service. They are experts in ink and experts in paper, and they can do a lot of extra and special testing for you and report back to you. And a defendant may not have that opportunity, so that defendant is very dependent on having an independent forensic scientist advising the defendant's attorney and trying to determine that. Now, it is true that the prosecution has a duty to turn over what's called exculpatory evidence if you discover something as a prosecutor or as a expert for the state or the government, and that shows that the defendant may be innocent. You have to give that to the defense attorney without even being asked to. But still, you need to have a scientist interpret that and explain it to the attorney. So there certainly is plenty of opportunity outside of government work, and there certainly is plenty of need.
Second question is, how many different career paths are possible today that might be called forensic science?
Probably the number of career paths are difficult to enumerate, because you can be an analyst in the lab, you can be somebody who writes papers, you can be an educator, you could be an administrator. I personally never really enjoyed doing analytical chemistry, so I enjoy reviewing files rather than actually generating the data. So there are plenty of opportunities to do many things. However, it doesn't mean that I didn't have experience. My PhD project was in analytical chemistry, so I do have experience in it. So you have to have an understanding of fundamental principles in analytical chemistry and various others. How you apply them and what you decide to specialize in, that's up to you. Some people like serology, some people want to do PCR assays all the time, some people want to work in the laboratory and others would rather just review cases and see the data. That's what you usually do on the defense side, because you don't generate it, because the data are generated by the law enforcement laboratories, because they've been to the crime scene, they've gotten the samples, and they've analyzed them, and then you get those results from them. So the opportunities are whatever you want to make them. There's great opportunities all over in all different areas: pharmacology, toxicology, serology, trace evidence. Whatever you're interested in, you can have a career in that area.
Super. Okay.